Let me start by saying I'm not someone who scares easily. I love horror movies and haunted houses. But what happened to me and my best friend Jenny on a camping trip a few summers ago terrified me to my core and haunts me to this day. It was the summer after freshman year of college. Jenny and I were back home in Michigan, bored and missing the freedom of being away at school. We wanted one more epic adventure before buckling down for sophomore year. We decided to go camping and hiking for a weekend in the Upper Peninsula, this remote area of Michigan known for its rugged wilderness and scenic trails. My older brother loaned us his good tent and camping gear. We stocked up on junk food, made a killer playlist, and hit the road. After a few hours of driving, we reached pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. We hiked deep into the backcountry, invigorated by the lush forests and shimmering lakes. Around sunset, we found this secluded cliffside spot overlooking Lake Superior to pitch the tent. That first night camping was idyllic and perfect. As the sun set over Lake Superior, we gathered fallen branches and built a cozy campfire. We roasted juicy hot dogs and gooey marshmallows over the flickering flames, telling funny stories and reminiscing about our epic high school adventures. After stuffing ourselves, we settled into our sagging camp chairs and sipped piping hot chocolate spiked with peppermint schnapps. The liquor's sweet burn paired perfectly with the creamy chocolate. Our giggles echoed through the quiet woods as we allowed ourselves to get a little buzzed. The inky night sky burst with dazzling stars and a big glowing moon. We played classic road trip songs from our phone speakers and belted out the lyrics, not caring who heard us out here. It felt so good to be carefree teens again, leaving the pressure of young adulthood behind for this weekend. Eventually, we doused the dying fire with water and retreated into our tent, snuggling into our cozy sleeping bags. The fresh night air had chilled considerably, but we slept warm, perfectly content. As I drifted off, the woods seemed to come alive with soothing nocturnal sounds. Crickets and frogs sang a gentle nighttime chorus. Rustling leaves whispered in the breeze. The constant roar of distant waves rhythmically rolling onto the lakeshore lulled me into dreamland. Out here, disconnected from everything familiar, it felt like Jenny and I were the only people for miles. Like this wilderness belonged to just the two of us. I sunk into my pillow, body and mind fully relaxing. After an epic day of adventure, I quickly slipped into a deep sleep, feeling safe and peaceful surrounded by nature. I'm not sure what time it was when a sudden, sharp, ear-piercing female scream jolted me violently awake. The blood-curdling shriek blasted through the tranquility of the woods, shattering the stillness. It sounded terrifyingly close, just outside our thin nylon tent walls. My entire body went rigid, heart slamming against my ribs. This was no ordinary scream. It was guttural, primal, the anguished wail of someone being brutally, violently murdered. I bolted upright, pulse pounding in my ears. Mine eyes strained wildly in the darkness. Jenny shot up too, her eyes white and wide with naked fear in the moonlit tent. We stared at each other in mute horror, breath coming in panicked gasps. The scream seemed to echo endlessly through the trees before fading into a heavy, eerie silence. Suddenly, the woods were void of all normal night sounds. No hoots of owls on the hunt. No scurrying of raccoons foraging. Just deafening stillness. Jenny and I clung to each other tightly, paralyzed by the sinister possibilities swirling through our minds. Had an innocent camper been viciously attacked at a nearby site? Were we next to face this unseen evil lurking right outside the thin nylon walls, separating us from the unknown darkness? Jenny and I clutched each other, huddled together in paralyzing fear. The woods outside were dead silent, waiting. Should we run out and try to help someone, or hide in the tent? We had no cell service this deep in the wilderness. After what felt like an eternity of silence, we uneasily drifted back into restless sleep, too exhausted to stay awake. I had terrible nightmares of a faceless murderer chasing me through these ominous woods. At first light, we awoke to sunlight streaming through the trees and birds cheerfully chirping. The woods seemed peaceful again. Jenny and I felt a bit silly about how terrified we'd been. Clearly just a wild animal's scream, right? We nervously laughed off the intensity of last night's fright. I unzipped the tent flap to grab my book from my backpack for a lazy day reading in the sunshine. That's when I let out my own blood-curdling scream. Right there next to my backpack was a separate bloody human hand. Jenny rushed over and screamed herself at the gruesome sight. The hand was half hidden by leaves, palm up with ragged flesh and protruding bone. Real congealed blood was everywhere, streaking the leaves and seeping into the dirt. Ragged flesh and splintered bone. We clung to each other, screams stuck in our throats. Oh my God, what the hell happened here last night? Who did this belong to? That's when I noticed the hand was made of thick rubber and plastic. It was a Halloween prop hand, expertly painted and coated in fake blood and guts. The bugs crawling on it weren't real either. Jenny and I looked at each other, realizing at the same moment that someone had played a twisted, sinister prank on us. That scream must have been a recording to terrify us awake. But who would do something so sadistic? We hadn't seen a single person since hiking it. Our campsite was remote and difficult to find. Adrenaline pumped through our veins. We had to get out of there now. We threw everything into the car in minutes and sped down the bumpy dirt road away from those ominous woods. It felt like unseen eyes were watching us the whole time. We never found out who terrified us that night. The rangers had no other reports of disturbances or missing persons, and we never went back to find out. Jenny and I still camp together sometimes, but never alone at an isolated spot. We don't feel safe anymore on the sticks. Looking back, we never should camp so deep in bear country without proper precautions. My girlfriend Sam and I just wanted a secluded spot to enjoy nature. We were naive 20-somethings who thought bears wouldn't bother us. Boy, were we wrong. It started out as the perfect wilderness getaway. We hiked several miles into a remote area of the forest, known for its scenic views and privacy. This was grizzly territory, but we only brought a small can of bear spray. All the sites nearby required bear-proof food containers, but out here, we hung our food bag from a tree branch. No need to worry, Sam said. I agreed against my better judgment. The first 2 nights were peaceful. We cuddled by the fire, cooking hot dogs and s'mores. I taught Sam constellations, and we dreamed up plans for our future. Young and in love, we felt like we had the world at our feet. By morning 3, storm clouds rolled in, and we were stuck in the tent all day. Branches scratched the nylon while thunder boomed. Rain pelted down in sheets. We played cards and read our books, waiting for the storm to pass. As dusk fell, the rain finally eased up. We emerged damp and hungry, deciding to cook a real meal. I fired up the camp stove while Sam grabbed the food bag. That's when a ferocious, guttural roar exploded from the dark forest, followed by the sounds of giant paws crashing through brush and snapping branches. Sam froze, eyes wide with primal panic. There lay our food bag, shredded to pieces on the ground. Cans of beans, bags of trail mix, and strips of jerky were scattered everywhere. The bear having swatted down the bag and ripped it to shreds in search of an easy meal. "Run!" I yelled, adrenaline flooding my veins. We sprinted the few steps back to the tent and dove inside, fumbling to zip up the door with trembling hands. My heart slammed against my ribs as I frantically searched my backpack for the bear spray, praying it hadn't fallen out. Outside the thin nylon walls, the bear let out enraged roars as it destroyed our campsite. The entire tent buckled under its massive weight, and I imagined its huge paws and snarling jaws coming through the fragile fabric at any moment. Furious claws raked down the sides, trying to tear through while we huddled helpless inside. It sounded like a prolonged train wreck out there, the splintering crunch of chairs being smashed, pots and pans crashing as the camp kitchen was decimated. The beast roared and snarled like a deranged demon. The deafening sounds of the rampage surrounded us on all sides, while inside the lantern cast an eerie glow on our terrified faces. Sam buried her head in my chest, choking back sobs. I stroked her hair, trying to soothe her whimpers while my own mind reeled in panic. We had no way to scare the bear off in self-defense. All we could do was wait it out and pray the tent would somehow hold. The flimsy nylon walls billowed violently around us with each swipe. It felt like meager protection against this unstoppable wild predator. I tensed, ready to place my body between Sam and the bear if it burst through and attacked. But the most terrifying part was the silence between demolitions. No growls or sounds of movement outside, just our panicked breathing echoing in the sudden stillness. Each time, those quiet moments stretched out interminably. Was it still lurking out there, watching us, planning its next move? We dared not peek outside or make a sound. We dared not peek outside. I rubbed Sam's back to soothe her whimpers. As the night crept on, the attacks came less frequently until finally they stopped. At dawn, we warily unzipped the mangled tent door. A disaster zone greeted us. The bear had ripped everything to shreds. Backpacks, clothes, camping chairs, food packets and trash were strewn about. Trees were gouged with deep claw marks. Sam sobbed thinking of our drive here and long hike wasted. I felt chills realizing the bear could have easily shredded the tent. And us. We were completely defenseless. We salvaged what little we could, then hiked out fast as possible. 5 miles had never felt so long. Adrenaline powered each step until finally, the parking lot appeared through the trees. Collapsing into the car, we just sat speechless for several minutes. The reality of how close we'd come to being mauled sank in. It was a sobering reminder that no matter how prepared you think you are, Mother Nature can humble you in an instant. She does not take kindly to arrogance or complacency. I'll never forget listening to that bear violently destroy our camp as we huddled helpless inside the failing tent. Or the chill running down my spine realizing how thin the margins were. Luck and a sturdy tent saved us that night. It taught me to respect the wilderness and come prepared. Don't take nature lightly or assume you're safe. One small mistake can have fatal consequences. We still camp, but not without bear spray, flares, and an enclosed shelter. The great outdoors rejuvenates our souls, but after tangling with that grizzly, I'll never let my guard down out there again. You either coexist carefully with nature or become prey. It's a lesson we learned the hard way, but we'll never forget. I remember this field trip in 10th grade that turned terrifying when a student went missing. Up until that night, it had been a fun camping adventure with my biology class. We were in the lush forest behind our school learning about wildlife firsthand. No one could have predicted the creepy turn it would take after lights out. There were about 20 of us kids, plus Mr. Adams and another parent chaperone. We hiked to a clearing by the creek to pitch our tents before sunset. Everyone was in good spirits, joking around and enjoying the freedom of being outdoors without parents. Some boys tried starting a campfire until Mr. Adams shut them down, not wanting anything risky. We ate hot dogs and s'mores by lantern light, listening to the gurgling creek. Then Mr. Adams called lights out at 11 p.m. sharp. We all retired to our tents with flashlights, giggling and whispering long after we were supposed to be asleep. I was in a tent with my friends Amy and Brenda. At some point I drifted off listening to the other girls' hushed chatter. Hours later, I woke to a commotion outside. Teachers were yelling for everyone to get up and gather by the picnic tables. Flashlight beams darted around in the darkness. Apparently around 2 a.m., Mr. Adams did a head count and noticed George was missing from the boys' tent. They thought he had just gone to pee in the woods. But after 20 minutes passed, Mr. Adams woke the other chaperone, and they searched all around the campsite to no avail. Now we were split into search groups to comb the woods for George. The adults tried to hide their escalating panic from us kids, but their strained voices and darting flashlight beams revealed the truth. My friends Emmy, Brenda, and I stuck close together as we stumbled through the oppressive darkness calling George's name. Leaves and branches scratched our bare legs and arms. Each snap of a twig or rustle made us jump. After over an hour of fruitless searching, the mood shifted to tense and somber. Where could he possibly be? Why hadn't he answered our repeated calls? Holding back frustrated tears, we pushed deeper into the winding trails. Around 4 a.m., Mr. Adams made the tough call that half of us should return to the campsite in case George found his way back, while the rest kept searching. Exhaustion and worry hung over us all. No one had slept more than a fitful hour. Just as the black sky gave way to hazy purple light, a boy named Tyler came sprinting down the trail waving his flashlight and yelling incoherently. My heart jumped. Did he find George? We grabbed our flashlights and hurried after Tyler down the rocky path. Rounding a bend, I saw several students clustered under a towering oak tree up ahead. Approaching slowly, the horrific scene came into view and I gasped aloud. There lay George, curled naked in the fetal position at the base of the massive trunk. His exposed skin was covered in dirt, bruises, and scratches. George's eyes were closed, and he was breathing but completely unconscious. No amount of shaking or shouting roused him. Tyler explained he just stumbled upon him like this. Everyone stood gaping in mute shock. A girl named Jenny started sobbing uncontrollably, her cries echoing through the woods. In the early morning light, George's condition looked even more horrifying and inexplicable. Where were his clothes? Why was he alone so deep in the woods? He had no visible serious injuries, yet was totally unresponsive. It was like he had been in some crazed, delirious state out here. Mr. Adams quickly removed his jacket and covered George's hypothermic body. As the paramedics arrived, we stood huddled together, their radios and lights piercing the dawn stillness. They carefully loaded George's limp body onto a stretcher as we all watched in numb, weary silence. The certainty that some sinister force did this hung over us all. The paramedics said it appeared he was in some kind of delirious state. As they carried him off on a stretcher, everyone stood in numb silence, faces pale with fear. The certainty that some sinister thing caused this hung over us all, whether supernatural, criminal, or an unknown force from the forest. The woods suddenly felt threatening, holding some dark energy we couldn't comprehend. At school on Monday, rumors swirled about everything from Bigfoot abductions to cult rituals, but I knew George well, and something about his vacant eyes in those moments before the ambulance doors shut told me he couldn't remember. Whatever happened was erased from his mind, leaving only terror. Weeks later, George did return to school, but he was different, jumpy, detached, prone to staring off into space during class. He refused to discuss that night with anyone. The doctors found nothing conclusively wrong, so we all pretended things went back to normal. But they never did. Not really. There are some experiences you don't come back from unchanged. The camping trip was never spoken of again by students or teachers. The woods were strictly off limits after that, as if overnight they morphed from sanctuary to threat. I can still picture George's bruised, hypothermic body lying helpless amid the trees we played in by day. It taught me evil things can lurk in nature's beauty, unseen until they surface to claim a victim. Those dark mysteries haunt me to this day each time I venture into the woods. Some doors unlocked cannot be shut again. Thanks for listening in. If you like what you hear, then please like and subscribe and support this new channel. Until next time.